It's the Awake Space Astrology Podcast. I'm Laurie Rivers with you, here to help you with some inspiration to get those aspirations out into the world. And this week, I'm talking to you about mindset, because Mercury stations direct on August 27th, and we have about a week before September 1st, when Uranus stations retrograde and Pluto enters Capricorn. We got to work on our mindset this week so we are ready to hit the ground running in September, folks. And you won't want to miss next week's episode, because I'll be giving you some big news when it comes to September and October with Pluto moving into Capricorn. I give you the rundown of what I think is going to happen this week, and then I walk you through the importance of mind step by step, and what you can do technique-wise to help yourself move into a better frame of mind. It's so important. So, I'm on my high horse this week. If you were wishing for some preaching and some teaching, here I am. That soapbox is tall this week. Grab your coffee, grab your tea, grab your iced tea, grab your matcha. I really like the rose flavored lemonades. Those are very good. I don't care if you're drinking raspberry juice or a cranberry cocktail. It might be 5 o'clock somewhere, and if you're having a little aperitif, that's up to you. Get whatever beverage is going to make you happy in the moment. And if you're driving, keep your hands on 10 and 2 and get a to-go cup. But anyway, we're going to have a good episode, and I'm going to get you primed and ready for this week. All right. Oh, and we have patron shout-outs. Don't forget to check the show notes, folks. That's where you find the link to anything I've mentioned in the show, and you can find things in the Patreon. Patrons, if you've just joined or if you're thinking about joining Patreon, click around the Patreon. Especially go into the shop. So many downloads for you. So many videos you can stream depending on your level. But a lot of those are free for $5 and up, and that includes the ebooks and some of the videos, like the Jupiter and Gemini video, the Pluto and Aquarius transits video. It's there for you. You have resources from me. Use them. All right, let's get on with the show. Can you believe we're in the last week of August? It's just flown by. And yet it's kind of dragged on a little bit, hasn't it? Well, the other months have just moved so quickly, and August has, yes, moved quickly, but it's also been a little slow, a little weird. And partly that was Mercury retrograde. But it was also because of Jupiter square Saturn, and Mars, of course, was square Saturn as well, very closely throughout this week. So things are starting to move forward a little bit, because Mars is moving out of that kind of push me, pull you energy that we've been feeling with the squares to Saturn. Mercury retrograde is about to end August 27th. Won't that be a nice day? Now, I think we can expect some things to happen that day. Usually, accidents, transportation. We could hear something about a star or a celebrity, somebody famous, a person of note. It could be probably a male figure that we will hear about. There could be just communication snafus, more hacking or communications failures, satellite issues, things like that. But I'll talk about that more later on in the podcast when I give you the blow by blow of what I think is going to come up this week. As far as the headlines go. So we finally get to have some forward momentum, and I hope you've taken the time to recalibrate, to revise, to review, instead of just sitting in frustration. Okay. There's a couple of things I want to talk about with this, and it's important to not be complaining. Okay. And let's talk about what complaint actually is. There's the complaints that nothing's going my way. Everything's hard right now. I wish everything would just stop. Can the world stop? Let me get off. All of that is a complaint. Not liking how different people approach different things, or arguing amongst ourselves and complaining about who should be doing something. When in reality, we all should be doing something. And each one of us has something different to do. It always kind of bugs me when people expect us all to do the same thing. Forced conformity is kind of a hallmark of these early Pluto and Aquarius times. This thinking that unity is goose-stepping in time together. I don't think it is. I think we can be unified in our understanding of an objective and what matters. And we can look at things beyond the black and white of a divisive scale. And I see a lot of that happening, especially on what would be considered the left. I don't consider it the left. I don't think America has an actual left, to be honest. Not really. We've moved the goalposts so far to the right that leftists are basically akin to Eisenhower, who was a Republican. And this goes in spiritual spaces as well. Remember, if you thought that there was a separation between spirituality and politics and career and relationships, then you're not listening to the right podcast, because I will never give you a separation. We have one body that experiences our life in all of its realms and facets. That's what the astrology chart shows. The whole of the chart is you in all of your potential. And those 12 houses and the 12 signs that make up the chart show how you as a singular entity interact with different parts of life. And the placements within the houses and how they send their energy to the houses, even if they appear to be empty, because by golly, they're not. Don't argue with me. I've been doing this for 3 decades. Didn't just read a book one day and decide I was an expert. Those placements and how they interact and how they send energy throughout the chart show how we can respond, potentially, dependent on our consciousness, whether we're in our fight and flight mode or freezing. I know they've expanded the idea, but in our survival mindset, our survival consciousness, and all of us experience that. Or if we're in, our social cultural programming, that consciousness, the one we live in most of the time. All of us operate within some kind of social norm. All of us, even us neurospicy people. Okay? Because we will have learned that some things work for us and some things don't work for us, even if we have to mimic and mask. I don't always think it's a bad thing to have to mask. Okay? I'm actually very grateful my mother forced me to have social skills, because, well, I think my life would have been harder if I didn't have them. Do you still have to face burnout when you're dealing with masking? Oh, hell yeah. Absolutely. But we still have to get along in the world, and the world isn't going to rearrange for us. Believe me, I'm a low vision person, and I can guarantee you the world does not arrange itself to accommodate us. We learn to adapt because humans are so amazing at that. And then, of course, our other consciousness that I talk about a lot is our transcendent consciousness, where I should just call it our deliberate consciousness, when we decide, when we make a decision. Some days I make a decision to continue masking. Some days I think, I don't see a payoff for it, so I'm just going to be my old neurospicy self. When we have the liberty and the luxury of operating deliberately, we can choose to operate in our social cultural programming, but we're not on a default setting, you see. then we have a lot more wiggle room. That's what your chart shows. Isn't that amazing? All of the chart is you in all of your potential. And it's so much more complex than positive, negative, evolved, and unevolved. And politics is part of that. And our work and our career and our calling in the world is part of that. How we interact with our families and families of choice is part of that. How we are in our physicality is part of that. Because we are here to spiritualize matter. Now, I'm bringing this up because as Mercury moves into its station to go direct on the 27th, as much as we'll see some brouhaha out in the world, and I'll talk about that during the headlines, what I think we'll see, we have an opportunity to take forward motion and shine our lights in ways that don't have to dim or shine in any specific way for anybody else, but rather with confidence, we move forward in a way that is authentic and honest without fear of vulnerability. You do enough of that, and it's like being at a concert where everybody's got their lighters lit. But instead, what we'll see is a lot of what about meism. We see it a lot already. The great astrologer Alan Oken once wrote about that somewhat sadly and with chagrin on having to deal with the what about me clients. The what about meism? What about my dharma? What about my path? What about my salvation? What about me? What about me? What about me? And how exhausting it is for the professional astrologer to hold the potential for a client in their hands as we seek to interpret the chart, and we can give them the keys to the universe. And all they care about is if they get laid and when do they get paid. It can be exhausting. Now, I message the way I message to make it very, very clear about the kind of people I want to work with. I'm not saying it isn't fun to get laid and to get paid. Of course it is. We all have to pay our rent. That's a spiritual endeavor as well. How we make our money. What is our enough? How do we resource ourselves? That's spiritual too. And it doesn't mean you disavow money. In fact, that's the dumbest thing in the world. And I fell for it when I was young. To be virtuous, to be on the spiritual path, I really disenfranchised myself. Am I playing a catch-up game in my 50s because of it? Because it didn't just last through my 20s. It went well into my 30s, into my early 40s. Because I felt guilty for making money, for having resources, because I had seen what happens in the world. I'd seen the exploitation by American, and actually forget American. They're not even American companies. They're multinationals. Okay, they have no allegiance to anybody. Okay, and the exploitation that happened out in the world. I'd seen unnamed conflicts that nobody ever heard of, where lots of people got hurt because somebody wanted to make a buck off of selling some kind of ammunition or armament in the name of progress. Some kind of righteous deal out in the world. So I've been there. I've done it. And you know what it is? It's a control mechanism, because if the only people are finding sustainability, and most of them are well beyond that, then the people of goodwill, the people who are of service, being impoverished and under-resourced can't really, truly be of service because you're in survival mode. Oh, ye of little faith, they'll say. Isn't it convenient that the rich men don't really get into heaven? And the poor people do, and it all happens after you die. Just putting that out there. Why am I here? Why am I talking about this with you today? You're like, well, what is she on today? Why is she starting this Monday this way? Well, because we're about to hit a very interesting time in human history, and it's a very brief time, but I'm sure it'll be a time that goes into the history books if the side I'm hoping wins is the one writing the story. Because that's what history is. It's a story. It's a story. And it is the story written by the victor. And that is what most people learn is propaganda. They don't, it's hard to find good history, especially anymore as things get revised. But we're walking through history. And what I get out of people is complaint. See, I'm going back to it. What I get out of people is complaint. I can't do this anymore. I'm tired. I'm this sun and I'm going through it. Whatever planet I'm talking about through its transit. And 90% of the time, the person commenting with whatever sun sign they've got that's struggling, the placement I was talking about has nothing to do with their sun in actual fact. Even by transit. It just shows they're looking for a reason to describe their pain. Pain is inevitable. Suffering is optional. And it is up for each of us to understand that. Life is pain, princess. That's one of my favorite Princess Bride quotes. Life is pain, princess. Anybody telling you different is selling you something. In that pain, we can feel joy. In that pain, we can be in wonderment and awe. And life has moments without pain. Okay. Suffering is another story. Even in Buddhism, people only think about when they say, life is about suffering. Well, but they haven't read all of the rest of the literature. They sit and they think about that spot and they luxuriate in the pain, which is causing suffering. It's why it's hard to watch some of the things going on in the world that we have access to visually right now and have over the last year or so. Even though the situation has been ongoing for a very, very long time in many different places in the world. Because we're watching people's pain become suffering because the suffering is coming to them. We're watching their faith be stretched. We're watching their humanity be discounted. And that can be very difficult. But if you are not they, if you are not them, then it behooves you to take what's coming over the next week or so and look at proactive ways of managing your energy. It is hard to watch. It is hard. Imagine how much harder it must be to live through. And we can be in righteous condemnation of every single person you want to be in righteous condemnation for and be absolutely 100% correct. And it still won't change anything. In order to make these changes, there has to be an extraordinary amount of pressure applied from multiple angles. Multiple. Not just a presidential race. Not just a singular person that we want to lead or don't want us to lead. It's not just through performative gestures. Remember, we all play social roles, and one of those social roles is the angry rebel. the righteous warrior. Those are social roles. That is not transcendent consciousness. It is a reaction formation to a situation. And it may feel good, even that fire in your belly. But if it boils down into they need to do something, remember, you also are they. Now, how do you do those things? Well, first you work on your damn self. And you get yourself some perspective, because with Mercury getting ready to station direct, you need to ground and self-reflect and find things you can easily do that move you forward to an objective that matters to you. Because you see, there's a whole lot different than focusing on something that matters to you than being a what about meist. Okay? My suffering, my pain, my tiredness, my hard luck. If I had no bad luck, I'd have no luck at all. Ooh. It is vitally important as we head towards September 1st, which is when Pluto will re-enter Capricorn. And let me look at my calendar, my handy-dandy calendar, because that will be Sunday, a week from the day I'm recording this. So Monday's podcast next week will be about Pluto and Capricorn and what I think we're going to see and some of what you can do energetically to deal with it. But this week, you need to get your head screwed on. Because even though we only have a week until Pluto bops back into Capricorn, and it doesn't do it until later in the evening. And by the way, if you want to know more about what's happening in Pluto and Capricorn, I'm doing a drop in my Patreon. That's like a video premiere. Doing a drop in my Patreon for the members at $15 and up, where I'm going to go through what I think we're going to see with Pluto and Capricorn over the next couple of months, and how you can navigate the energy. I'm calling it the Pluto Survival Guide. So you can check that out if you're a Patreon member at the $15 level and up. If you want to make it through that intensity of this grand finale of a transit, Pluto popping back into Capricorn for 2.5 months, then you need to get your mindset straight. Instead of thinking about what you can't do, what you don't have, what misery you're in. And I'm not saying it's not real. I didn't say it wasn't real. What I am saying is if that's where your focus is, God help you, it's just not going to get easier in the next couple of months. In fact, it might even get harder. Because if that's where your focus is, energy flows where attention goes. And no, I'm not saying you're creating the hardship for yourself. I'm saying you're making it damn difficult to pay attention to your own personal guidance and to the opportunities that are around you to pull yourself up and out, to see the help and support that is around you, because it is there. You could miss out on some magical opportunities, because when our focus goes to the problem, it cannot find the solution. That is a physics fact. It is a psychological fact. It is a neuroscience fact. It is not just because I said so. Okay? It's facts. And you are in charge of your brain. Now, you may have a wily brain like I do. Boy, can this brain go down rabbit holes. I was the absolute world champion at catastrophizing, especially in my 20s. If I could imagine worst case scenarios upon worst case scenarios layered into worst case scenarios and fall into an abyss, man, I'd do it. And it was a waste of my time and my energy. And it held me back. But we didn't have all the information we have now. We have so much wonderful information about the brain and how it works that has come out since the mid-2000s that never existed before. And yet, people will grab onto a label and wear it like a badge of honor because it somehow validates their life. I understand wanting our trauma validated. I understand wanting to be seen and heard and understood. Because when you're going through a lot, people often seem to dismiss it. I understand that. But people don't have to feel your pain to understand you're in pain. That is not required. It's not required. Okay. And it will hold you back, and it will make the next couple of months very, very difficult. And I'm not saying don't cry if you feel sad. Don't wail if you're grieving. Feel it all. Feel it all. But don't live there permanently, because it doesn't define who you are. It doesn't. And if you sit there going, I feel robbed of the time. I feel robbed of the experiences. Of course you feel robbed. Man, I remember feeling like that. I'd love a 5-year period of my life back. I would love it back. I would love to be able to go do a do-over. But you know what robbed me? I robbed me. I robbed me by luxuriating in the suffering. I robbed me by identifying with the trauma to the point where that was my reality. That was my perceptual understanding of me, myself, and I in my life. So when I'm talking about this, I'm talking from a perspective of somebody who very much has walked in those shoes. It was in my 30s. And I had every right to feel how I felt. Just like you have every right to feel how you feel, however you're feeling. Positive, negative, everything in between. It's not about rights. It's about objectives. And we're all up on deck. All of us are up on deck. It is all hands on deck. We do not need every single human being on the planet to agree at the same time to make something happen. But if you're listening to this podcast, then you're working like hell to be deliberate in your consciousness. You didn't come here for me to wake you up. You came here because you were awake and you were wondering what's next. Well, what's next is intense. It is. And it's glorious. It's glorious. And if you can take a step back, it's kind of divinely funny too. It won't look funny, but it will. But you have to have an irreverent sense of humor to see it for what it is. What's coming, Laurie? I love how people say, what's coming? Oh my God, I can't take it. I'm so scared. I have found that everything worth having is on the other side of fear. Everything worth having is on the other side of fear. What will people think of me if I do this? They'll think I'm a bad mother. They'll think I'm a horrible woman. They'll think I'm a bad wife. They'll think I'm lazy. I'm selfish. I'm. And so holding back from doing you to make other people comfortable, and then having the great excuse of them holding you back, which they didn't hold you back. You chose to hold yourself back because you were choosing to be in that relationship. Maybe you didn't choose to get stuck in it, right? You chose to buy into the social cultural programming. I did. I stayed married, my second marriage, way too long. Because I was worried, especially in my 30s, about what people might think of a woman who was twice divorced who left 2 men because she was ending family pattern and chose her independence. People would think I was selfish and self-centered. Oh, and they did. Trust me, I am a villain in some people's stories. Because people couldn't understand. They were willing to live in that tunnel of normalcy that is social cultural programming without thought, by rote, playing playing a role. And I wanted to live life and just live it. Live it. We're going to die. It's an eventuality. We don't know when. Even as astrologers, we can get a ballpark. But not everybody's accurate. And it's really hard to calculate your own. Really hard. You live each moment. And you live it like it's your last. And that's how you have an extraordinary life. But I don't have any money, Laurie. Oh, I've been there. Sometimes we don't. And sometimes we got to figure it out. Sometimes no matter what we do, things are not working the way we think they should. I remember in 2008, I think I sent out 100 resumes and I didn't even get a whiff or a nibble for an interview. And I was willing to commute at that point. Not even a whiff for a nibble. What's wrong? Because when I was young, I didn't have that problem, right? I wasn't even all that old. I wasn't even 40 yet. But, and I took it. At first, I was very frustrated. I'm not going to lie. I cried on the couch. I put my face in a pillow and I flopped myself very melodramatically on the couch and I cried. And then after I was done crying, because I'm a Cancerian and this is how I clear my energy, I realized those pipe dreams I had that I was frustrated with because I was trying to build businesses on limited resources and my brain was tired and I was burning out. The universe was saying, give it another shot, give it another shot, give it another shot. One more day, Laurie. One more day, one more step, one more step, Laurie. Here's a little glimmer of hope. Just take that glimmer and just keep going. Treat it like a firefly. There's more coming. And you can make a lamp out of it. And it did work over time. I had to let go of a lot of ideas about who I was and what mattered and what people thought. Instead of going, what am I really called to do? How do I be of service? And I'll never forget, this was years later, about 2016, right before I left. I was sitting on my front porch and I asked myself a very important question. What am I willing to lose to be of service? I don't suggest you do this, but I was like, everything. If I can be in my purpose and of service, I'm willing to lose it all. And boy, did I, for a short time. And then I had an epiphany of like, well, what if I ask the better question? What do I gain from being in service? Which was different than what's in it for me. But what can I gain from being in service? What would matter to me? What would show I was successful in my life? 1, happy. 2, my kids talk to me. Good relationships with my family. That became my measuring stick. Money? Well, can I pay my bills? Sure. I'm not a very materialistic person. Not because I reject materialism, but just because I'm kind of really easy to please. I had to raise myself. I was like, you know what? You can be comfortable. What would comfortable be like? Oh, a nice bed, because I can sleep on a floor and be fine. But is fine enough? What would be my enough? I love that concept of enough. But you know how you get to those places, guys? You got to surrender and you got to let go and you can't fight the process. Doesn't mean you can't flop yourself on the couch and have a good cry. It doesn't mean that you don't shake your fist at the sky and scream at God or the universe or the goddess, whoever you're working with. Doesn't mean you don't feel scared and you white knuckle your steering wheel when you drive on a road you've never been on before. Doesn't mean you don't take more than 2 or 3 deep breaths because your heart is pounding in your chest because you're terrified to speak in public or do your first live stream or speak to a judge or show up for yourself. We are all tired. We are all past cooked when it comes to our nervous systems. The energy has been such that it has been reminding us we need to slow the fuck down. And we need to contemplate, what is my enough? How can I be comfortable? What does comfort look like? A lot of times we think it's a designer label, a designer bag. When in reality, it might be the people we love have enough food. The people we love have a home or time together. We always talk about love is the most powerful thing. It's the most powerful energy, and it is. But we think we need to earn it. And the fact is we don't. We don't. It's our birthright. You are loved every single minute of every single day by your guides, by the universe, by your ancestors. You are the fulfillment of their wildest hopes and dreams, and they are never disappointed. Let me tell you, the beings that I have traveled with in my spiritual and metaphysical journey are only impressed by those of us who have taken on a physical mantle, because it is hard to be physical. It is hard to walk this road. And we are always encouraged. Be open to that, because when you're complaining, you can't be open to that. When you're like, I just struggle and suffer, you can't hear the encouragement. You can't hear the heavenly hosts sing your praises. You cannot hear the constant joy and love and feel the frequencies of healing coming at you at any given moment when you're complaining. But it's okay. They keep doing it anyway. And hopefully, after you have a good cry and you blow your nose, in that moment of stillness, you can hear or feel or see or get a sign of some kind. Don't second guess it. I know I'm preaching to you. But there's a reason for that, guys. We got a week, and you want to shift your mindset. And it doesn't take a lot to shift your mindset. Instead of going, oh my God, I don't have this thing because I need $500 and I only have 10. Well, maybe you don't need that thing. Well, make a list of the stuff you already have. The knowledge you have, the friends you know, the access to resources. Maybe you don't have it, but maybe a library does or a makerspace does. And if you only have $10, why are you thinking of blowing your last $10 on something that has no guarantee of serving you? Whereas maybe you take a look at where is money coming in and how can money come in? Because you could go to a thrift store and buy something and sell it online to make more money if you could not find a job. We have so many tools at our disposal. And no, you're not going to make $1 million overnight doing it. But you might make a couple of $100 and you could buy some fucking groceries and eat if you're struggling. If you're struggling. I set up my business so that if I did not have my fancy computer with the very cool keyboard that you guys have seen on a couple of videos, if I didn't have my dual mics with my sound interface, I can do everything I need to do on my cell phone. Absolutely everything. What if the internet goes away, you ask? I'm a damn good cook. I can still do astrology. But I figure if we get to a point where the internet wasn't available, I don't think people would be interested in astrology. I think they'd be needing to cook. So, and I can cook on a fire. I don't think that's going to happen. Okay. Would I be less than being a damn good cook than I am as an astrologer or a podcaster? And the answer is no. As long as you're attaching your identity to a certain job, a certain relationship, a certain role, you have lost your freedom. You are now bound and shackled to a reality that does not serve you or anyone else. It doesn't. Obligation is not service. Okay. So, well, boy, did I go on a rant. I think it's time for some patron shoutouts. And up next, we're going to be talking about what I think is going to happen this week. And then we'll end this on some mindset matters. How's that? Talking about mindset tips and tricks that will help you get ready for September 1st. All right, you heard the music. It's time to do some patron shout-outs. Alrighty, we've got Desiree, Deanna, Jen V, Audrey, Chatty, Anna, Carrie, Kristen, Stephanie, Ashley, DS Chick, Aaron, Carmen, Hope, Lee, Skylar, Jessica, Jacqueline, Christopher, Jessica, Silver Sphinx, G, Junshi, Olivia, Alejandro, Photohead 337, Nikki, Aislinn, Larissa, Kamala, Marlo, Rachel, Wage, Carrie, What Up Though, Lise, Jasmine, Jason, Kevin, Paige, Lisa, Jenny, Katie, Ocean Man, Heather, Kim, Vivian, Summer, Lou, Helen, Alexa, Mickey. Oh wait, I got this one. Ostea, I know you just gave me your pronunciation, but that was closer. Katie, Bianca, Marquesa, Nora, Stephanie, Grace, Kavi, Lily, Tiffany, Jay Crest, Jay, Lacey, Nicole, SKH4444, Oren, Laura, Kinsey, Diane, Jane, Melissa, Natalie, Alex, Lauren, Mary, Rosiended, Victoria, Sherry, Louise, Doris, Janelle, Tease and Floof, Judith, V, Stella, GP Proxy, Gigi, Maddie, B, Laura, Allison, Laura, Jacqueline, Bethany, Rhea, Elizabeth, Alyssa, Morgan A, Morgan K, Megan, Desiree, Mouthwash, C, Amy Cox, Cindy, Cheryl, Clover, Melinda, Things Jen Says, Candy Moon, Megan, and it looks like Pre-Star, Nina, Kayla, Aaron R, Sherry, Jenny, Jess, E. Willis, R. Contreras, Olivia, Michelle, Kate, DeMarquine, Laura, Lola, Mel, Jeremy, Mercury Queen, Andrew, Jody, Ethan, Lace, Nicole, Hoya or Joya, Marcy, Courtney, Stacy, Brinley, Jessica, Shay, Jonique, Lavender, Jenna, Teresa, Melissa, Mary, Sheila, Sabrina, Grisha, Renee, Momi rhymes with homie. I love how you guys are changing things so that I say it right. Momi rhymes with homie. Polly, Caroline, Virginia, Jordan, Brenda, Lupe, Carrie, RV, Emily, Gina, Diana, or Deanna, Coral, Cynthia, Cindy, Stephanie, John, Sarah, Serena, Paradox Priestess, Kelly, Mama Shar, Connie, Sophia, Hannah, P, Amy, Kate, Rhonda, Christ, Catherine, Josephine, Kenneth, Rhonda, Lisa, Val, Sarah, Kate, Leah, Aaron, A. Hunter, Stephanie, Robin, Grace, Kelsey, Alicia, Taylor, Christopher, Allie, Allison, Natalie, Libby Lou, Robin, Lexi, Lori, L. Likes, Tawny, Stir It Up Ranch, Andrea, Taylor, Christine, Kimberly, A-Bomb, Pagey 230, Retired, Kelly, Colleen, Ann, and Lori or Cherry. Thank you all to our newest members. I appreciate all of you. Oh my, oh my. So we've got a wild week ahead, but it's really a prep week. It is a prep week. It's so funny. People are like, nothing happened at the Democratic National Convention. I'm like, sure it did. There was plenty that happened. I don't know. People are so used to, like, I think we've become desensitized to things. So we're going to start here. What do we got coming up here? The moon in Gemini. Now this is going to be a little stabby and a little crunchy. The moon in Gemini is quick, swift, and a little stabby. We could see people quick to act. We could see some really big windstorms. These could include hurricanes, microbursts, tornadoes, sandstorms, and unseasonable wind. Remember, this is global. We could also see multiple storms active in one region, so coming in from the north, the south, west, etc. We could see a mass stabbing, attacks with swords, knives, or drones, and with sharp objects. I know we've already seen a couple of those things, sadly, in the headlines. We may expect more. We could see issues with hot air balloons, helicopters, and gliders. We could see a big car pileup or car accident. This might be on the 27th. Especially since the moon will be in Gemini, and on the 27th we have Mercury stationing to move direct. Or it could be like a high-speed rail. It could be an air accident. It could be issues with drones, missiles. We could see an issue with a major author, speaker, or thought leader in the news. J.K. Rowling is certainly still up on deck under scrutiny. We could see new music released or pop culture. Icon shows up or performer exposed. So some musical person or a pop culture icon is up on deck in the headlines. That could be positive. It could be negative. International agreements or negotiations fail. And I think that's the ceasefire in Israel. Elections I need to take that out. Elections in the UK have already happened, but we can see issues with their governments. Issues with commercial flights, airports, and air traffic control, or employees at airports and airlines. So issues with air travel in general, also with military aircraft. We could see rockets and satellites in the International Space Station up on deck, and we've been hearing about that. Meteorites or space debris fall to Earth. We could see missiles, drones, and sneak attacks, which we actually saw just ahead of that. But some of that was the Jupiter or the Mars-Jupiter conjunction in Gemini. We could see a journalist or journalism in the news, and this could be attacks on journalists. We could see secrets leaked or revealed from corporations or government agencies. We could see documents discovered that cause a scandal or shed light on an unsolved mystery. We could see major manufacturer issues recalls or has investigation into faulty parts. This could be for cars, toys, anything mechanical. Explosion in the air, satellite fails or falls to Earth, meteorites or shooting stars, or some strange happening in the sky and or lights in the sky. That could include the space station astronauts having issues. It could also be solar storms and northern lights. Remember that the transits are global. Accidents and political upheaval can also be big storms or natural events and vice versa. All right. So August 30th to September 1st, we have the moon in Cancer, and it's bringing in water, and it feels a lot. So we're looking at maybe some big infrastructure failure. I think this could be roads and bridges, potentially dams. Issues with the UK government, dams actually on September 1st, evening of September 1st. Issues with the UK government, parliament, or royal family. We could see nationalism boosted, and that could be right-wing, seems to make progress with their agendas. It doesn't mean they're going to win the war. It's just they win a battle or something. And we could just see a lot of authoritarianism. We could see issues with foodborne illnesses, especially listeria and salmonella. Dairy or dairy farms or dairy products could be recalled, poultry and eggs as well. We see major infrastructure destroyed or a big failure of dams, bridges, or a shopping center, some type like a city center area. This is global. We could see a major retailer or chain announces bad financial numbers. We see maternal health, women's health, child and family welfare in the headlines, water quality issues, environmental issues, and climate change. Water wars begin. We may see more issues around water rights. Female presenting person of note in the news speaks out against current policies. We see restaurants close, issues with food supply and food processing plants, sizable earthquake, 5.0 or some volcanic action. This is global, anywhere in an active region. Erosion causing storms, hurricane, water spouts, big waves, tsunamis, banking and currencies under strain. Kamala Harris will be under pressure and is having to show up in a different way. So now that's going to be in my predictions throughout September and October. Okay, because she is under, once Pluto moves back into Capricorn, she is under some strain. We could see some big rain, issues with weather, and rivers, floodplains, hurricanes, hail, big tides. Netanyahu may face removal, investigation, or lose an ally. Old guard leadership fails either due to health, coup, or forced retirement. So those things could happen in the world. I don't think we would remove Netanyahu. I think it may happen within his own government. And that may not happen during this lunation. We might see it during the month of September, maybe October before his birthday, but I think, so I think that's what's up on deck and in the headlines. So there we go. So it's a lot. Now, is there any good stuff happening? Of course there's fucking good stuff. In fact, I haven't even called all the bad kinds of things that could happen. There's good stuff that happens every single day. Look for it. Share it. Share the good news. Okay. I'm just saying what I think is going to be in the headlines. It just proves accuracy. Again, I run about 87% correct. I'm fine with that. I find it's very interesting when people do not understand how predictions work. It can be thematic. It can be over time. Okay. It could be like there was an event, you didn't hear about it, but it caused something that you do hear about 3 months later. It happens. So, yeah, there's that. Alrighty, let's do some more patron shout outs. And then we'll talk a little more about mindset and how we can use it to our advantage this week coming up to get ready for a big week starting on September 1st. And again, if you're a patron, I got you $15 level and up. I got a big presentation for you. At the end of the month, August 30, I think it's the 30th. It's 5 days from when I said it. I think it's Saturday, the 31st. Yeah, August 31st at 12 p.m. Mountain. That's 11 a.m. Pacific. It is 2 p.m. Eastern. So that's when that's happening. Alrighty. Let's do some patron shout outs and then we'll talk more about how you can work with your own mindset. It doesn't have to be perfect, guys. It doesn't. It just has, it's not about perfection. It's about being effective. Okay. And you'll see results. And that's the fun part. Okay. That's the fun part. And it might feel which funny. And I'll talk about this. Remind me. What's funny is we feel selfish when we go to move into be in our alignment because it's inconvenient for people who like us right where we're at, but it's not functional or sustainable in that position. Okay. For anybody, if we just go along. And then when we choose our purpose, our calling to spiritualize our physicality, we feel selfish. Even if we're going into service, even though we know what we do will help other people. Okay. Because we're moving and growing and people either keep up or they don't keep up. Okay. They either can or they can't. And we're not judging it. We're not judging it. Maybe it's not even about keeping up. Maybe it's about the direction we go in. Okay, so I'll talk about that at the final segment. All right, Mercury is getting ready to station direct. And that gives us all an opportunity to change our mindset. We've had the opportunity to review and revise and consider. But if, like I talked about earlier in the podcast, all we did is complain or grimace and gripe and grudge, then we're in for it. Now, mindset is everything. Our perceptions shape our reality. This is not a positive vibes only statement. However, the power of positive thinking has been around for a long time. Let's talk about some of the ways we can be a little more positive. Now, that isn't pretending that you don't have a wound that needs healing. Okay, so if you've cut yourself, pretending you haven't isn't going to make it better. In fact, it can make it worse. But we have proven even that a positive mindset puts us in a better direction than being a pessimist. Pessimism is not realism. So, do we have climate change? Yes, that is the reality. Okay. The reality, without opinionating on the matter, opining on the matter, without editorializing on the matter, we have climate change. Now I can sit there and worry and fret and toss and turn at night over it because when I look at the rest of the facts with it, it seems pretty dire. And I can also say human beings are very adaptable. That is something that we are. And we can rise to meet the challenges. I know not everyone has resources or access to resources. But sometimes our greatest resource is, and in fact often is, our mind. Okay? I am not coming to you with theory. I'm coming to you with a life lived through having to find solutions. Because I like to say I front-loaded my life with obstacles. Probably because if things were going well, I got bored, right? And when you're really smart, it's amazing the problems you can create that you have to solve to stay not bored and engaged. No, it wasn't always that. I started life with some serious challenges. But even as a small child, I had learned the power of my perceptions. I noticed if I thought a certain way, my vision changed. Things could get cloudier or less vibrant. And when I was in a better mood, things were brighter and clearer. And when I was very young, about 4 or 5 years old, I was asking my mommy the story of when I was a baby, because don't we do that? And she said, the doctor said you had an 80% chance of dying. And I did the mental math and I said, well, then that would mean I had 20% chance that I would win, Mom. 20% kid is what I like to think of myself, because I did live. And I thrived against the odds, against the obstacles. Okay. Whether it was health obstacles, my vision, trauma that was induced at a very young age and sustained for many, many years, repatterning. I have struggled and suffered. And rebelled against it at the same time until I learned how much of the suffering was on my shoulders. Not the pain, not the trauma. I didn't induce it, cause it, or attract it. Okay? But the suffering, the difference between processing the pain and living in suffering, that was 100% wholly up to me. And once I figured that out, the world became my oyster, because it was like, well, fuck that shit. I started this podcast talking about there is nothing separate from our spirituality. We do not live a spiritual life and a physical life. We do not have a career life and a family life. We have one life, and how we live that and the quality of that life is wholly dependent on our perceptions. Wholly dependent on our perceptions. And we are moving into a time where the vestiges of what was are threatened. The systems are threatened. They're going to be acting out, and that's power structures. And those power structures aren't just above you. They are around you, and they are within you. When we talk about patriarchy and hierarchy and, all of those archies and isms, they are both outside of us as well as within us. As above, so below. As within, so without. Okay? We've got Pluto moving into Capricorn starting September 1st of 2024. And it's going to pack a wallop. And trust me, next week I'll give you the lowdown. And if you're a patron at the $15 level and up, you get your special presentation where I'm going to go through what to expect September 1st itself. Because we have Uranus stationing retrograde on the 1st, and that happens fairly early in the day. So the planet of surprise and disruption is going to appear to stop in the sky, put the brakes on before it starts moving backwards. And Pluto, later in the evening on the 1st, it might be early hours of the 2nd, depending on where you are in the world, goes back to Capricorn. This is bada bing, bada boom, big moves. We could see earth-shaking events. We could see wars expand. We could have climate emergencies. We could see natural disasters and volcanic and seismic activity. We could see accidents, violence committed. We could see world leaders start to fail. And before you go, huzzah! It doesn't mean the policies are going to change. But we could see issues with the systems that we live in, because they need to be reworked. So things have to crumble before we can build again. And do we want to build in the same spot? Do we want to build with the same design? I hope not. We haven't been very sustainable. All these people clamoring for normal. What's your normal? Because the normal I saw in the world wasn't sustainable, wasn't equitable. All these people who are suddenly aware of white supremacy. Oh, it's Trump's fault. No, Trump emboldened them, but he didn't create them. It existed. He leveraged it. There have been many who have told you that. Whether you're worried about what's going on in the various genocides in the world, which have been ongoing for a very long time. Okay. But you can see it now. And you don't like our foreign policy. The United States, well, you shouldn't like any of our policy for a very long time. Decades upon decades. It's not new. And it's not a secret to the people making decisions. I'm glad you're aware of it now. Okay? You have to be a strategic thinker, and you have to think that there will be some kind of resolution. It may not be exactly what you want. It may not. You're certainly not going to see the decisions you want made anytime soon. Not this year, not in 2024, because that time has passed. The opportunity to choose that route into the future passed us years ago. Years ago. Back when Pluto was in Sagittarius. So now we have to let this play out. So you can't, literally, you cannot, you alone cannot fix or make this thing better. There's nothing you can sacrifice. There's nothing you can martyr yourself for. There is nothing you can give that will make this better the way you want it to be better in the moment. But you can help people who are trying to help. You can support people and organizations that are trying to make a difference. You can be involved at your local level. You can volunteer for a food pantry. You can volunteer for a local parks and rec to help keep your parks clean and attractive. You can volunteer with organizations that help with the houseless. You can send donations. If you can't physically do it, you can make phone calls and texts, whether it's political or social, whatever your interest is. Okay. There is no separation between our spiritual life and our physical life. And energy is our emotions and our thoughts. They're measurable in waves, just like sound and light. We have a great opportunity. We have a great opportunity to work moment by moment to switch our mindset. It does us no good to be intellectually involved. As in, the intellectuals love to be pessimistic and they think it's realism. They want to go to nihilism and existential crisis. How good does that do you? It doesn't do you any good. It doesn't make the world a better place. It doesn't alleviate anybody else's suffering, and it certainly doesn't alleviate yours. But does it make you feel like you're a good person? Because, only good people are going to feel this way. Is that what's happening? Because if that's the case, you're going to have a really hard 2 months. You're going to have a really hard 2 months. And I know it sounds like I'm saying be selfish, to mind your thoughts. But if you fall into despair, You aid and abet the oppressor instead of finding glimmers of hope. When I was a young child, experienced gross amounts of trauma. Over the top. Stuff that wouldn't just make your eyelids curl, you wouldn't be able to sleep for nights on end. I'd wake up every day and say, it's got to be better than this. It's got to be better than this. And eventually it was better than that. A hell of a lot better than that. And you're right. Not everybody gets to wake up another day. And that's called life too. Pain is inevitable. Suffering is optional. I'm not saying don't care about things. I'm saying don't luxuriate in such a way that it prevents you from embodying that which you came here to be. Not do, be. You're not supposed to do anything. You are supposed to be and be as much of all of you as you can be. Spiritually, mentally, psychologically, emotionally, and physically, and integrate all of it together as much as possible. I'm not making excuses for bad policy. I'm asking you as an individual to make a decision about how you are going to go about your day deliberately. So when you catch yourself doom scrolling, whether it's about the weather or political situations or the factioning that goes on, and we will see people factioning over the next 2 months. We will see people getting very heated, if not seeing actual violence on the streets, not just in the United States, a lot of places. We will see conflicts expand because they kind of have to at this point. Things have to get ugly before they can heal. It's just where it's at. And I think we're still a long ways away from any of my absolute worst case scenarios. But the Jenga tower kind of has to fall. And guess what? It's made out of pretty rotten material and it's going to stink. And you can luxuriate in the stink. Or you can open a window and get some fresh air. And you can focus on who is doing good work in the world. Instead of, that's kind of my problem with canceling people. One, I don't like pig piling, but two, canceling people, as in making a big show, an example of them, can lead to projection. It can fall right back on you. Okay? It can fall right back on you. It can be mirrored right back at you. Instead of just blocking somebody. The mass block movement was great. I thought that was just fine. Yeah. But instead of expecting certain people to do something, what if you band together with other people and you do something? You do what you can with what you got, where you're at. Okay. We have to stop looking for singular leaders to save us. Whether it's women's issues, women's causes, LGBTQIA, marginalized groups of all kinds. It takes building coalitions. It takes building grassroots movements, and it takes doing more than clutching our pearls. Sometimes that means we have to move. Sometimes it means we have to do something we don't want to do. I never wanted to come back to this country. I never felt comfortable here. I don't fit in culturally. And I certainly didn't fit in culturally almost 30 years ago now, when I had to come back. But that's the decision I had to make at the time. I would have much rather lived other places, but I could not retain custody of my children if I did not come back to the States. I couldn't have fought people off from those other countries. I could here. And I'm not just, even if I'd gone to Europe, I couldn't have done it. So coming back to the States was my best bet. I did that back in 98. I didn't have any money. I spent what little I had, and I had friends who did help. And we all got lucky because things worked out. I got back with $50 and 2 small children and had to restart a life, not having lived in this country since I was 18 years old. Was I educated? Yeah. Did I have a lot of great work experience? Yeah. Nobody believed email references back then. It was horrendous. It was hard. And then I had to restart again at 47, but I did it on purpose because I was like, yeah, I don't have 2 little kids. I can do it. This is way easier. The Power of Positive Thinking. There's a book called The Power of Positive Thinking. It's by Norman Vincent Peale. Go read it. I'm sure there's an audiobook. Think and Grow Rich by Napoleon Hill, written in the 20s and 30s, where he interviewed the robber barons. Believe it or not, it's a damn good read. It's not just about making money. It's about creating the conditions for reasonable contentment. Everybody has a different thing that makes them know they're safe and secure and happy. And it's okay to be happy when other people aren't. We all get a turn. You know, when I was a little girl, my grandma would tell me there's starving people in China because there had been a great famine in China. And I think it was in the 50s. I was like, send my food there. And that wasn't the wrong attitude as a little kid. Send my food there. And see how me eating my food was going to change anything for somebody who didn't have food. It sounds coarse. There are relief agencies to donate to. There are groups of people doing good things in this world. Put your focus on them. And I really suggest you practice this week. So how do you practice? So when you catch yourself thinking something like, oh man, I could never get ahead. Stop. Think back. Be like, okay, here's a time I struggled and overcame it. Here's an obstacle I remember very clearly being worried about that. Again, I overcame it. I had a really hard time financially back in whatever year. And here I am today. I managed to get past that. This would have been a problem I would have really appreciated when I was in that other situation. Okay. And if you're young and you haven't had the opportunity to gain perspective, know this too shall pass. You've been nervous about other things. You've been worried about other things. And look at, you're here. You're here right now. Okay. Find 5 good things about what's going on around you. Whether you can see pretty artwork or there's cool music blaring in the grocery store, or you saw a baby and it smiled, or you saw a butterfly and a rainbow, or a crow dropped a present in your lap, or your puppy decided to just totally do the cutest things for you, or you saw just the right video on TikTok right when you needed it. Look for those things and keep account of them. Write them down as a reminder. It's so important as we move through this week to practice building the skills to help us see solutions. So if you think of a problem, don't just think about the problem and what might happen. How can you solve the problem? Einstein said the same thinking that created the problem cannot create the solution. So we have to switch into a solution mindset. Now, I'm old enough that I learned how to drive in a manual gear car. So for me, I literally have like a gear shift in my head. I'm like, switch gears. Problem? Oop, need solution gear. But you might like choose a toggle like on a video game, or choose whatever mode you want to be, like beast mode. Okay. You practice that this week, the next couple of months go a hell of a lot better. And it matters because the more of us who can hold our consciousness deliberately, the more we're choosing pathways collectively that are a little less intense. Okay? So that is what's up on deck this week. I want to thank all of you for listening. I want to remind you to tune in to It's Back, Pluto in Capricorn presentation on August 31st in the Patreon for $15 level and up patrons. It's going to be a good one where I walk you through what I think we're going to see over the next couple of months and how you can navigate that, what it means for people who have cardinal placements, but what it means for everybody else. Because you hear a lot of bullshit online about, these guys are going to get it the worst and these guys will get it the least. And everybody's like, are we going to get it worse? What about them? Why just us? And it's very selfish. It's very selfish. Not everybody has to share our pain. Not everybody has to share our struggle for it to be valid. Okay. We do not even have to be witnessed, and it is no one's job to understand us except ours. So your job is to understand you. My job is to understand me. To seek understanding and approval and agreement from everyone else is going to have you running a fool's errand the majority of your life. Because we don't need agreement and acknowledgement for things to be true and real in our own truth. You want to be liberated? You want to be free? Then you got to free yourself of those types of thoughts because they will shackle you into unnecessary stress and suffering for far longer than you need. And I know, I've been on my pulpit this week, but it's that important. It's that important. We really need that. It's going to be a wild couple of months. And we're going to see some real magic out of it too. I'll cover some of that in the presentation. We have to stop thinking of the world in binary terms, black and white, good and bad, positive, negative, evolved, unevolved. And isn't it nice to be so pious and virtuous that we look at people and we go, oh, that person's evolved and that person is unevolved. Who are you to judge? You're not. The only evolution that is any of our business is our own evolution. You get that down, you're not going to worry about everybody else. Okay. You got to worry about your consciousness. You hold that, you're going to attract people who are much easier to be around because you're not projecting all the other stuff out there. No, you don't attract exactly everything that ever happens to you. But when we're used to seeing a certain condition, when we are vibrating on certain frequencies, it is hard to go somewhere more comfortable. Right? That's how we stay in relationships we know aren't good for us. That's how we stay in situations that are highly uncomfortable. And I've done it too. And I've been in the camp of judging the evolved and unevolved. But what if somebody serves a purpose with the consciousness they hold? We don't have all the answers. We just don't. So, focus on you. Look at other lights that are shining and how you can join with them. We don't have to shine brighter than other lights, nor do we need to dim our light. But if your candle's lit and it's burning at a certain level, you want to hang out with other people whose candles are lit and burning like that. And then you create this massive, massive beacon of light. And that's what the world needs. So, this week, when you think about a problem, immediately turn your attention to, I wonder what it would take to make this situation better. What steps can I take to solve this mystery? What solutions can I think of in the moment? Okay, if you're in the mystery school, there's a bunch of videos on mindset. Like half of the 24-week curriculum is on mindset. All right. So, alrighty dighty, folks. I want to thank you for listening. I'm Laurie Rivers, your host, and I'll be talking to you next week. And we'll be talking about Pluto and Capricorn.